Hi all, Dr. Clark here again, and today for forest management, I'm going to give a brief overview of the plant collection. Okay, so that's what this video is about. So you can go back to this video and examine it while you're making your plant collection, etc. Now, the plant collection is a virtual plant collection. So you don't need to kill any organisms. All you got to do is get out there and take photographs of different plants. So what does that entail? I will tell you right now, or I'll show you. You must have in your collection 20 living plants. Okay, these cannot be dead plants. Okay? If you're taking a picture of a twig and there's no leaves on it, there's no flowers on it, anything like that, it's hard to say whether that's actually living or not. Okay? So you must have material on the plant that can, first of all, help you identify it, okay? Because I have to be able to identify that plant via your photo. So we'll come back to that in a second. So 20 living plants. The rules are they must be wild. So no cultivated, no garden plants, no house plants, no going to a nursery and taking pictures of the plants that they're growing there. They must be wild plants. Okay? They must be in their native habitat. So, you can't have the plant. It might be a wild plant, but it can't be in your hand. So you can't pick it and hold it and take a picture of it. It can't be in your house. It can't be cultivated somewhere. So they must be in their native habitat, rooted in the ground. It must be your picture. No internet pictures, anything like that. I will Google your pictures often if I think, wow, that's a really high quality picture. And I don't know anything about you. Maybe you're an amateur photographer. Maybe you're a professional photographer. I'm going to Google your picture. If it pops up that is not your picture, or that I can buy that picture and your name's not attached to it, you'll earn a 0 on the entire assignment. Okay? Again, must be alive. Okay? I don't want twig pictures. I don't want dead stems, dead twigs, anything like that. I realize that maybe winter is upon us and you might have snow on the ground, but that doesn't mean you can't take pictures of coniferous trees. Okay, conifers, they don't lose their needles, okay, except for a few, but they don't lose their needles. So you can tell that tree indeed is alive. So you can get quite a few in the region. And again, it doesn't have to be in Wyoming. Could be in Utah, could be in Kansas. I don't care where you take the picture from. That information you're going to include specific information of where it came from. Okay, but if you go on vacation to Hawaii, Jamaica, Africa, you can take pictures of living plants from anywhere in the world. Okay, but again, they must be alive. All right, some other requirements. The photo has to be of good quality. I'm not expecting you to be a professional photographer, but I am expecting a photograph that allows me to identify the organism from the photo alone. Okay? So if you take a picture of a tree, in that description, okay, so maybe you're just taking a picture of, the top half of a tree or the branch of a tree. In the description, when you're writing information about the organism, you need to estimate the size of the organism, and you need to let me know, hey, this was a tree or this is a shrub. So if you can't get a high quality photograph of the entire organism, which many of you won't be able to do if you're taking pictures of trees, okay, you need to include that information. Otherwise, most of the time, you're not able to identify the organism. Okay? Poor quality photographs that I'm not able to identify the organism from the photo alone, you'll get minus 5 points. Okay? The project's worth 100 points. You have to have 20 plants. Each plant's worth 5 points. The photograph is key, okay? Because if you misidentify a plant and it's, misidentified because it's a poor quality photograph, then you're going to miss all the points for that organism. Okay? You must include the common name and the scientific name for that plant. Okay? I'll show you some resources that you can use. Otherwise, you can often search. You can go to the Forest Service or BLM, and often if you have a question about, what's the species of plant, they can often help you with that identification. Really easy. Or you can send me the photos, and I can help you with identification. Okay? It's fairly easy to get the names of these organisms. Okay? You must have the exact location. And when I mean the exact location, I want the UTMs for that location. Now, some of you might not know what a UTM is. You might know what Latin longitude is, or what a GPS coordinate is. A UTM is a universal transverse Mercator. Okay? It's a method to record latitude and longitude, but it's universal. It's across the entire planet. Latitude and longitude, it depends on where you're at, whether you're going to be positive or negative, and it has to do with, whether you're above or below the equator. And so we're not going to use latitude and longitude. We're going to use UTMs. And that's what most mapping programs use. So I want you to use UTMs, especially if you're going to go into forest management, fish and wildlife management, some ecology field. You're going to use UTMs when you deal with things like ArcGIS and other programs, mapping programs, to map data points. All right, the date and the time. Okay, so date and time, I need to know what day the photograph was taken and the exact time it was taken. Now, there's a couple caveats with this project. You cannot use photographs older than 2019. Okay, so they must have been taken in 2019. I realize that some of you might have pictures of, some plants that you saw, and maybe you took a trip to Hawaii in September. Okay? You're perfectly fine with taking and using those photographs, okay? As long as it was 2019 or 2020. Okay? Weather. Okay? The weather is very important, okay? In that it tells me a lot about, potential color manipulation of the photograph. So was it cloudy? Was it sunny? Was it raining? Is that why there's, water drops on the plant? Is it, along with the time? Was it 6 o'clock in the morning and this is dew? Okay. What was the weather? Is it really windy? And so that's why, the portion of the plant is distorted, is because the winds, I need to know the weather so I can make an easier identification of the organism. Okay? Plus, it's just good to be able to go back and say, hey, I remember that day. I remember that date, that time. I remember the weather. Anything that can cue you in to remembering more information about a plant is great. Okay, and that's how researchers work. So you don't just say, all right, this species was blah, 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 and leave it at that. You also want to include more information that at a later date might prove to be very important. Okay, the plant status. Okay, is this plant rare, common, endangered? Okay, what's the status of the plant? Can you find it only in certain states? Is it the state flower of a state or a state tree of a state? What's the plant status? Okay. And then the piece that a lot of people skimp on and a lot of people don't get into is the ecological habitat type. Where can I find this plant? Okay, where did you find this plant? Okay, and what are some of those features that would lead someone to be able to find this plant? Maybe you show, a magnificently beautiful flower and someone wants to find it. Maybe a friend of yours is looking at your slides and says, wow, I really want to see that flower. I really want, to go check that out. Where can I find it? You can give them the exact location, the UTMs, but what if they go there and it's not there? It's not blooming. It's not in that region anymore. What was the habitat type? Where was it growing? What was the soil like? Was the soil sandy? Was it moist? Was it dry? Was it rocky? Okay. Was there a lot of organic material on top? Okay. Was it underneath tree canopy? Was it out in the open? Was it on the north facing side of a slope, the south facing side of the slope? Was it next to a river, next to a stream? Was it, in the grasslands? Where was the organism from an ecological standpoint? And then what else was with it? Right? Is it just by itself and it just grows on a sand dune all by itself? Great, write that down. But if it's, with other plants, okay, well, maybe there's a relationship between that plant and another plant. Okay? And so that kind of ecological habitat type or ecological information is very important for each one of the plants that you choose to capture. Okay? All right, so let's look at one. So here is a picture that I took, okay, on June 11th, 2019. This is a wild rose, or Rosa Sayi. I took it in a little mountain region, and here are the UTMs for the exact spot where I found this flower. Okay, and there's the elevation. Okay. It was at 1:30 in the afternoon. You can write in scientific notation, what some people call military time. Okay, it's scientific notation. Or you can write AM, PM. Just make sure that you're writing AM, PM. It doesn't matter to me, but please use some kind of time stamp. Okay. The weather was partly cloudy, about 65 degrees, with about a 5 mile per hour southwest wind. Okay. Widespread, common throughout North America. This is, the status of this plant. Okay. Wild rose is found pretty much everywhere if you're in the right habitat type, okay, which plays a role in this kind of eco habitat that I wrote here. This plant was found in a small clearing with moist sandy soils at the base of a north-facing slope. Okay, so you already know that if you're north-facing slope and you have moist sandy soils and you're in a coniferous forest, okay, then you might have the opportunity to find this flower, okay? Apart from that, it was associated with Oregon grape, another species of plant, okay, and some miscellaneous grasses. So that's kind of the eco type or the eco information that I want for each one of your organisms. All right, so some of you might be asking, well, how do I get UTMs? Okay, the best way to do this is download a free program called Google Earth Pro. Okay? And then when you're out, make sure that you're noting exactly where you're at. Okay, so this is Little Mountain over here. This is the road I was traveling on. Okay, the spot where I found my flower was T12 64 3645. So it's somewhere in this region right here. Right, and that's where I found it. So how do I get UTMs? You can see down here, the UTMs are given to me and the elevation of the region. So wherever I put my cursor on, it will tell me the UTMs and the elevation. When you first download Google Earth, if you've never played around with it, it'll probably give you your UTMs in latitude and longitude, okay, or decimal, percent, something. except for it won't be UTMs. Okay, so when you first open it, this is the desktop version. I'm not entirely sure about like a cell phone version. There are Google Earth apps. I'm not sure if you can get UTMs through the app that you would use on a cell phone. If you can't, there are ways to convert it. You can just take the latitude, longitude, as long as you know it's in here. I'll show you. So when you go into Google Earth Pro, you can just, right when you enter it, you can go into the options underneath tools, click on it, and then here you can see it says show lat long. Okay. I think the default is either decimal degrees or decimal minutes and seconds. Okay? Now, when you use another app, and you can use any kind of app you want, there's tons of free apps for your phone. You're also, if you use a GPS unit, you can always use a GPS unit, and you're probably going to get it in one of these, either decimal degrees, degrees, minutes, seconds, degrees, decimal minutes. And one of those is going to be default on whatever unit you use. Okay? You can always go into the setting and set it to Universal Transverse Mercator, or UTM. Okay? And that's what I would like you, okay, and what's required of you to use for this collection. Okay? And then you can just hit apply. In this case, I've already applied it, so I can just hit cancel. Okay? So that's a pretty simple way to get at UTMs and start your collection. So again, good, high quality photographs. Okay? Don't have to be professional, okay? But the organism in question is the focus of the picture. Okay, so in other words, I don't take a picture like this and point to, this tree right here and say, oh yeah, it's a blue spruce. Well, come on, man. No one can identify that. Okay? If you can't identify it from the photograph, then I most likely won't be able to identify it from the photograph because of the poor quality of the photograph. If you can't identify it from the photograph because you don't know what plant it is, but it's a high quality photograph and you know the plant in question is right in the middle of the photograph, there's no other things that are distracting or anything like that, then I'll identify it for you. All right? Just send me it via email and I can help you with that. All right, so good, high quality photographs and good information. The exact location, the exact time and date, okay? What's the status of that plant? What's the ecology of that area or the region that you found that organism in? Okay? That's all there is to it. It is due the last day of class, okay? And I will post that due date, okay, as we progress throughout the class, okay? But I'll post a place for you to upload that material. So if we go back, how do I want to present it? I want to present it in a PowerPoint presentation with each species being on their own slide. So you should have 20 slides, or maybe you have an introduction slide, so maybe 21 slides, 20 individual species. They each have their own slide, right, and a photograph to go with it. Now, let's say you are taking a picture of a tree and you don't want to write down here, the approximate size of the tree, etc. You could take two photographs. You could take a photograph of the branch of the tree. Okay, so, that can help with identification. You probably should use a cone if it's a conifer, because that's how you identify them. And then you could have a picture of the entire, tree itself. Okay, so then you'd go back and take more of a landscape view picture of the tree, and you could post it. So having two pictures is perfectly fine. Really, more than that is not needed. Okay? They just need to be good photographs to help with identification. Okay. All right. So have fun, enjoy, and utilize me as a plant expert. So if you have questions about identification, send them to me via email. Don't be surprised if I send some of them back and say, look, the photograph is not high enough quality for me to identify, or I don't have certain pieces. If it's just a branch that's got some leaves on it, well, where's the flower? Hey, where's the underside of the leaf? Some of these things are very important that you have to identify certain species. Okay. All right. Till next time.